The topic of my talk today is developing 21st century skills through project-based learning, its implementation, assessment, and impact. So since this is an educational grand round, what do we expect to learn out of it today? So we expect that we are able to identify 21st century skills, discuss the significance of project-based learning for development of 21st century skills, and relate student competence on 21st century skills with their future academic performance. This is the outline. I will start with a brief background, the need and the dream. What is Middle School Project? What is the research that we did, the methodology, and our findings? Okay. Do I need to say something more on this slide? Okay, so the background. AKU Examination Board focuses on assessment of higher cognitive skills. And that is, the students are required to not only learn knowledge, but acquire knowledge at an understanding and application level. And we know that many affiliated schools or non-affiliated schools in the country have very traditional curriculum and teaching and learning in the classrooms. And the finding was that students used to struggle when they used to reach grade 9, specifically if they were associated with AKU Examinations Board. So 3 years ago, when we were doing the strategic planning, one of the key gaps or findings that came up was that there is expectation from students that when they reach grade 9, there will be a magic wand that the teacher will flow on them, and they will all become critical thinkers, problem solvers, will learn with understanding, and will forget what they have been doing till grade 8. This was probably not practical. So, and there were requests from school that we needed something in the middle school, so prepare those students for higher level of learnings. And when I joined AKU Examination Board, I've been part of the Aga Khan University and the Department for Educational Development at Faculty of Health Sciences for the past 10 years now. So when I moved to Examination Board, there were certain dreams I took with myself. And those were to identify a competency model for AKUEB, development of 21st century skills among students, introduce integrated and interdisciplinary learning, and introduce student-centered experiential learning. And we wanted to introduce these into our SSC and HSSC programs. However, there was an opportunity at that time, and we said, while we are designing a new program for the middle school, why not inculcate these key features into the middle school program? So we at the Aga Khan University Examination Board dreamt of it. And we had to go to Mars to get some high-tech technology to video capture our dream. And I would like to show you what we dreamt of.
My name is Ikra. I'm in grade 6. I'm in DG Model High School in New York. Coming to school is the point of learning new things. And if you learn the same old thing again and again and again and again in school, it will seem old to you. It's like eating some ice cream and there's no sugar or any kind of flavor in it. It doesn't taste good. But just like that, if you don't learn new things, it doesn't feel good too. I must be in the middle school program for middle schoolers. The workbooks are more exciting than the textbooks because there are more projects. You get to do more researching, and you get to do more teamwork. I learned about distilled water in chemistry project. Only four setups with the result of a group until it is not. When we brought the two from the room, the beakers inside that were filled with distilled water. That was cool, because when I read about it, it said that you had to boil the water and condense it into a clean container. That's it. But then when we did it, it was more clear and I understood more of the activities that I did. Teamwork helps your body to be best. This mixing different people's ideas is good because when you mix all the ideas up, you get one good big idea. Because everyone has come to share their ideas. It's like this with my friend. It will look nicer. It will be like everyone shows their opinion when you got you.
Okay. And then there is a saying, when you have a good idea, don't put it to seed, put it to work. And we had to work, right, to put it into a reality. So the first step was to identify 21st century skills and develop an AKUEB competency model. So we chose 8 key skills: information gathering, listen, reads, views, communication and interpersonal skills, teamwork, responsibility, problem solving, critical thinking, creativity and innovation. And we designed this model very, very close to our heart. The next step was to put in all the ingredients into the middle school program. So it is a project-based experiential learning with focus on developing 21st century skills. The content of the projects are aligned to the national curriculum. However, each project is integrated. So it may have content based on 2 or more subjects. And there is flexibility because we know that schools during the middle school may follow slightly different syllabi. So what we do is we develop 6 projects for each grade, and the schools may choose any 4 which best aligns to their syllabus and to their academic calendar. Then was the task to develop projects, teacher guides, student booklets, and an assessment rubric. There was a challenge. We knew that it would take us years to develop teachers, how to develop these skills into students, and how to assess these skills. And we weren't ready to wait for so many years. And we thought, let's develop a rubric which is very explicit, which explains on all these 8 competencies what is expected of the students, and make it available to teachers, students, and parents. And the expectation was that when the students would look at the rubric, they would exactly know what they need to do, what they need to demonstrate in order to get higher scores on that rubric. So it comparatively makes it free of teachers. I won't say this, however, less burden on the teachers. Till we develop the teachers and train the teachers, the students also develop these skills. However, the teacher development department was very active across the country. There is some initial training which is offered and orientation. Then there are classroom observations and individual support to teachers wherever there is a requirement. And then there are annual teachers meetings at the end of the academic year where there is reinforcement. Teachers from different schools would come down, discuss their challenges, and we do troubleshooting for them. So we developed a rubric for assessment of 21st century skills. Each student is assessed on each project on the rubric 4 times. So as soon as the student would complete the project, whether in groups or individually, each student would be assessed by the teacher on each project. An average of 4 projects at the end of the year are used to give feedback to the students as to how they have performed. And we also try to compare these student competencies against their class norms. We are in the process of developing national norms, so we would soon have enough sample to say it out that these are the national norms for grade 6, 7th, and 8th for these competencies. However, since we do not have enough data at the moment, we are reporting class averages. So this is how the rubric looks like. We have these competencies listed. It's a 7-point scale where every alternate point is very explicitly explained as to what the student is expected or what the teacher will observe and rate the students on. This is just a snapshot. Of course, this is a 2-pager. And this is how we report the middle school performance back to students. So on a the average they got on each of the skills and the class norm. So they know for certain skills they were above the class, and for certain they were their class average, need to improve upon certain skills. This is also accompanied by a narrative report for each competency. The student get a 2 to 4 liner as to how they have been performing and what needs to be improved. And then we rolled this out into the market. Let's look what the reality looks like. Did you remember the dream? Yes? No? Yes? Let's look what the reality looks like.
Basically, what a demarcation is marking the boundaries. There are 2 different types of demarcation. One of them is naturally made demarcations, and the other one is physically made demarcations.
Okay. What medical concepts do you like?
So you're defining everything scale. So you're like area, perimeter, administration systems. So even a person that comes to make a house, design it ourselves.
मिडिल स्कूल प्रोग्राम AKUEB का वो प्रोग्राम है जिसमें ग्रेड 6, 7, 8 के स्टूडेंट्स को फोकस करके इनकी लर्निंग एबिलिटीज को प्रिपेयर किया जाता है इनके लिए फिर SSC और हायर सेकेंडरी लेवल्स के
Examination board is 9 and 11 flat level. This is at 6 and 8 level, where they are exposed to project-based education.
It was my second year in being AKUEB section, and it was very much exciting for me to do these projects and I know with my group members to the internet and search about chromatography, like what is chromatography, ideas, information, and we learned how to work in groups, how to do the type of research, and how to present ourselves individually. And we have gone to Wasa also for the presentation plan, where we saw that many stages about the related to a project, which was water purification.
The projects are never history fun. It's history, maths, science. Never the science fun. Science, maths, social studies.
just education for sake of completing the book या syllabus नहीं है education को पूरी life में हिस्सा बनाना
This is what life is. I'm really doing everything every day, but when I'm going to closer, I'm not saying I'm doing my maths. I'm doing my maths. I'm cooking, I'm doing science, I'm washing for the science, right? So that's what life is about.
That's why हमने MSc की इस चीज को कॉपी भी की है कि हम grade 1 से शुरू की grade से हम इसको आगे लेके जाएं
It gives them the power to think.
सर्च की इस तरह ग्रेड होता है इस डिजाइन कहाँ से लिया गया है जैसे इसकी डिजाइन ईगल को देखते हुए क्या कि ईगल किस तरह होता है
Be curious. Develop actually learn skills in the mind.
This program we just practically act upon it. For example, if it is given our topic, so we will research on it. So we do the part of study. But if we are practically applying on it, so it is fixed in our mind and it is a very good part of our learning aspect.
The foundation, before we go into the examination system to high grades, is becoming very, very strong.
Thank you. So as soon as we rolled out this program, we started receiving very good feedback from schools, teachers, parents, and other stakeholders. And when we were going to schools who had enrolled for middle school program versus those who have not, it was a very frequent finding that we saw different students. They were very good in their communication skills, very confident. When you talk with them, the interaction was at a very different level. And this is why we believe that the student enrollments kept on increasing year by year. So the first year we designed and rolled out this program was 2015. So Dr. Shehzad Jiva was a firm believer that this project-based learning would work. He comes from a science background as well. And then I had put in all the ingredients. Sorry. So there are some people who are enrolled online, so we need to connect them again. And it started working. Despite this positive feedback and observations in the school, there remained a question. And the question was, there were two major aims. The first one was, yes, developing these competencies, and these were being observed. The parents were observing them at home. However, the other was intended outcomes in terms of future academic achievement. Did it help students when they reach their grade 9 to do learning at an understanding and application level, to really problem solve during their exams? And in 2016, we got an opportunity where the first cohort of the middle school who have experienced middle school projects in grade 8, 1 year only, had moved into grade 9 and appeared for AKU-EB examinations. And that's where we thought this is the time to really look into the data and see if it's working. So the research questions were, what is the reliability of scores on 21st century skills assessment using the AKU-EB middle school program? Reliability is a quality indicator for measurement, and it shows how reliable or accurate your scores are, your data is, and how much error is there in the data. Since we relied on the teachers to assess, and since we were relying them to assess students on something which they had never done before, on the competencies based on their behaviors, attitudes, and demonstrations, we weren't too sure as to what is the quality of scores we were getting. And since we had kept this middle school program scores very formative, these were not high stakes, students were not passed and failed. We knew they were not going to take these scores to take admissions into any other schools or universities or to apply for jobs. So we were very okay when we thought these may be not as accurate as they should have been. And since we were relying across so many hundreds of teachers across so many schools, we were sort of satisfied as soon as we were giving feedback to students and we were watching them improving on their skills. The second question was, do the MSP 21st century scores increase with increase in grade? So we thought, what could be the other indicators of quality to know that the scores we are getting are actually true scores, they are accurate scores. So the other question came to our mind is, as the student grows and develops and progresses from grade 6 to 7 to 8, the scores should increase. And this was one evidence we thought, if we find this, this could be another small piece of evidence to show, yes, the scores are reliable, they are accurate. And the third question, the major aim was, do these competency scores in grade 8 predict performance in grade 9? Do they have any relationship with each other? So what we did, we used scores of all students enrolled for middle school project in the years 2016 and 17. We identified some descriptive statistics which are mean and standard deviations for each grade and for each competency. We did the reliability analysis using Cronbach's alpha. The correlation was done using Pearson correlation and prediction was done using linear regression. And when we found some good results, we put it to further challenge, and I'll explain what we did for diagnosis using cluster analysis and sensitivity and specificity studies. I'll explain what these are when we go through the presentation. Just to show you the number of schools So in the first year across the country, we had 38 schools. And in 2017, we had 68 schools. The third year, we have around 120 or 150 schools. So this is the pace this program is actually going at. And you may all be aware that in each school during the middle years, there is an average of 6 to 8 teachers doing these projects with students. So if you multiply these figures by 6, you will get to know how many teachers are involved in scoring students. So the first question, are AKU-EB competency scores reliable? These are the student count, the student numbers for 2016, and the student numbers for 2017. For 2018, we have approximately 14,000 students enrolled, and next year we'll be crossing 16,000. And this is the reliability. So those of you who may not know, reliability ranges from 0 to 1. The higher it is, the more accurate or reliable the scores are. For high stakes examinations, internationally the cutoff is 0.8. For very large scale international examinations, the cutoff is 0.9, which I think it is very, very, very challenging to achieve. My panelists in the front row are smiling, and we all know. And we were actually surprised to see the reliability. They were very, very high against what was expected. But there was a catch. The reliability increases artificially with increase in student numbers, and the experts are nodding their heads. They had this question in mind, right? So we put it to further test, don't worry. So what we did is, so now you see the student numbers in different years at the national level and at the provincial level. Let's take the smallest numbers. 48 students in grade 7, probably 1 or 2 classes in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The reliability came out to be 0.87. 21 students, grade 8 in Punjab. Probably 1 class, the reliability came out to be 0.949. So this showed that the reliability was not being artificially inflated by the high student numbers, and even for each class, the reliability was very, very high. In most cases, crossing 0.9. In a few cases, if you round it off, it will reach 0.9. So we were not worried. The second test. Do AKU-EB competency scores remain stable in terms of difficulty? So we thought, let's put this to another test, because we were not believing as to what was happening. Probably the teacher development team did a very good job. And we thought that the difficulty of each competency should remain similar across years and across different grades. And what did we find? What we found was that teamwork, interpersonal skill, and responsibility were the easiest. I'll show you across 3 grades and across 2 years of administration. So as a set, these 3 were the easiest to score. Then was information gathering, communication skill, listen, reads, and views. And they also remain as a group the second most difficult across 2 years of administration and across 3 grades. And of course, as we had thought, problem solving and critical thinking and creativity and innovation were the most difficult to score, and they remained most difficult across 3 grades and across 2 years of administration. Another sign that teachers were doing a good job in their class assessing students. So this is for grade 6th, grade 7th, and grade 8th. And the relative difficulties remained the same. The third question. Do these competency scores increase when students move from grade 6 to 7th and to 8th? And what did we find? Yes. For most competencies, the scores increased as the students moved from grade 6 to 7th and 7th to 8th. For teamwork, there was a 0.01 dip. We may say it remained the same. For interpersonal skills, it remained the same across grade 7 and grade 8. And in most others, yes, the scores did increase. And now remember the number of schools multiplied by the number of classes, multiplied by the number of teachers involved. So this is not one teacher, this is not one school, this is not one class. A very strong evidence that teachers were doing a good job. the final major objective. Is there a correlation? Is there any relationship between these competency scores and grade 9 scores when the student moved from grade 8 to grade 9? And remind you again that they had only experienced 1 year of middle school project. Grade 8 only was the first year of exposure, and after that first year, they moved into grade 9. So we use Pearson correlation, and what we see is these are the competency scores from 1 to 7, and this is their SSC Part 1 grade 9 high stake exam overall percentage. And what we see is a general trend: as their competency scores increase, the SSC Part 1 scores increase. So there is a correlation of 0.488, which is considered good at 99% confidence level, which would simply mean if we do this experiment 100 times again, we are expected to get the same result 99 of the 100% of the times. This is the confidence we get on this result. And then we thought, if there is such a correlation, based on grade 8 performance, can we predict grade 9 scores of students while they are in grade 8? And we used linear regression. And what we found was that 24% of their grade 9 scores were due to their competency scores in grade 8. A quarter of the scores in grade 9 were due to their competencies being developed or achieved in grade 8, which to me is a big number. And again, this was at 99% confidence level. And then we went further. We were very excited. The first evening we got these numbers, we were actually jumping and clapping in our office because we were not expecting this much from this project. And then we thought, is there a possibility that we can identify high-risk students who have a higher chance of failing in grade 9, identify them or diagnose them in grade 8 based on their competency scores, and give them additional support and prevent this failure? So the scores were put to additional tests to see if it can diagnose these high-risk students. Okay, so for this I use cluster analysis. Cluster analysis is a statistical technique which scientists use to classify plants, animals, fungi, bacteria. So have you ever heard of taxonomies? We all had to learn of fungi, bacteria, plants, and so on. So cluster analysis is a statistical technique when you put in the different characteristics of these plants or animals, or even astronomers use it to classify different clusters of stars and planets. It will automatically analyze the data and will give you the natural classification based on the data you have provided. As part of my PhD, I used the same technique and used this technique to diagnose medical students' competence. And what we found as part of my PhD thesis was that there was a very high correlation. There was a very high match between what the expert clinical teachers said about students and what did cluster analysis said about students. So if the expert said they are very good, cluster analysis said yes, they are good to be good doctors. If they said no, we are unsure, cluster analysis said it is unsure. And if they said they are a clear fail, cluster analysis said yes, they are a clear fail. There was a very high match when I used it for the first time in education. And then I thought, let's use it and put in these competency scores as characteristics of students and see what happens. And we ran 3 or 4 different kinds of analysis. We asked the software to divide the students amongst 2 clusters, 3 clusters, 4 clusters. We went up to 5. The 2-cluster solution was the best based on certain statistical analysis, and hence we used the 2-cluster model where we requested the software to divide the students into 2 different groups. And the software did it. The software divided, okay, so I think I missed the point. So there were only 674 students who had moved from grade 8 to grade 9. So the early analysis was based on huge numbers, but these were only 674 students across the country whom had moved from grade 8 to analysis group, these 430 as one group and 244 as the other. This is what cluster analysis does. And then you have to analyze and make sense of it. So what we saw is that this group had a higher mean competency score and this group had a lower mean competency score. Their mean competency score was 6 on a scale of 7 and their mean competency score was 4. So we named them as high scoring and low scoring. And we went on further to see how did this high scoring group in grade 8 performed in grade 9 and how did this low scoring group in grade 8 performed in grade 9 AKU EB SSC examinations, and this was the difference. With those with an average of 6 on competency performed at an average of 66.5% with the standard deviation, and those with an average of 4 had scored 56.8%. And then we use a statistical technique known as independent sample t-test to see if their performance was statistically significantly different, and yes, their performance was significantly different. So yes, cluster analysis was helping us to identify probably high scorers and low scorers in grade 9 when they are just passing grade 8. And this is how their score distributions work. So based on cluster analysis, yes, their average was 6, ranging from around 7 to around 5. And the lower scoring group had an average of 4, ranging from around 4.5 to around 2.2. However, if you look at their SSC scores, they were very largely overlapping from here to here. So we went on further. We said, let's not look at scores, let's look at their grades. And this is what their grade distributions were. So the high scoring students on their competencies, you see the blue bars. This is the percentage of students securing these grades. So 10 to 11% of them still failed. However, when you look at low scoring students, this is their performance bar as compared to the high scoring students in grade 8, and 30% of them actually failed in grade 9. So in grade 8, probably you can capture these many students who may fail in grade 9, give them additional support, additional time, remediation to make sure that they pass through their examinations. We put it to further test, and I'll explain this to you. Largely for medical diagnostic tests and other tests, suppose you are going for a test of malaria or typhoid. It will tell you either you have typhoid or you do not have typhoid. Either you have malaria or you do not have malaria. And you may recognize there are times when the test says so, however, the doctor says, no, you do not have this disease, the test is faulty. And to test the quality of such diagnostic tests, there are certain indicators. And these indicators are very widely known and used and relied upon, and they are sensitivity and specificity. So sensitivity would tell us, if we put people to test, what percentage of students would it truly identify as diseased or at high risk? And specificity would tell us what percentage of people would it truly identify as to be disease-free. And based on cluster analysis, high scoring and low scoring students, at risk and not at risk students, what did we find? We found that cluster analysis based on competency scores were able to pick up 65.38% of all students which would fail in grade 9. And it would very accurately pick approximately 71% of the students which would clearly pass in grade 9. And these are very good numbers. Getting a specificity and sensitivity around 70% is considered very, very good. So the accuracy came out to be around 70% based on these two figures, and hence we concluded that there is a possibility to identify high-risk students in grade 8 and give them additional support. So what did we find? We found that MSP 21st Century Skills Assessment scores are reliable. The difficulty level remained relatively stable across grades and years. The scores increased with increase in grade. An approximate 24% of variation in grade 9 scores were due to their competency scores, and cluster analysis provided additional evidence of predictive validity, and this will be explored further to identify high-risk students. So they were found to be reliable with evidence of predictive validity. I would like to acknowledge Dr. Shahzad Jiva, who has been pushing us to do project-based learning and to do the research. A lot of encouragement and support comes from him, my partner in crime. Mohammad Kashif, who did all the analysis for us. Ali Bijani, who is the team lead and is responsible, him and his team is responsible for teacher development across the country, a small team which is doing a marvelous job. Rabia Hirani, who is the lead project development, AKU academic specialists who develop these projects, and AKU EB communications team who went to Mars to get the technology to record the dream for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naveed. And it's always wonderful to see such great work coming out of EB. Okay, so now to move on to our second part of the session, which is our interactive panelist discussion. So first, Naveed, I'd like to invite you up on the stage to be as one of our panelists. Thank you. Also, as our panelists, we have Dr. Sam Olenio, who is the CEO of the West African Examination Council, Ghana. Dr. Sam. Mr. Jamil Yusuf, he's the Honorary Secretary and Board of Governors, Al Murtaza School Network. Mrs. Karmeen S. Parak, who is the principal of Virbaiji Supariwala Parsi High School. And of course, Dr. Lubna Beg, who's the Pro Vice Chancellor and Dean, Institute of Public Health, Jinnah Sindh Medical University. Thank you, Doctor. So first of all, I'd like to invite comments from the panelists about the presentation.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Really thank Al-Khan board for keeping all the stakeholders on board. I think that's the best thing about the board. I remember in 2003, 2004, there was sort of a meeting where most of the stakeholders, schools were called in about project-based education. And I was extremely excited because my teachers and heads who are sitting there know that when I joined VBS 15 years ago, the first thing I did was bring in all my experience on project-based education, have this first workshop, and insisted that we have to sort of have project-based education in the school. And it was obviously everybody was a bit subzahir. And then it was quite a tedious task for us because basically for me, because the onus was on me. So we had to design our own projects. But wow, when Al-Khan board started doing this for us, I don't know whether people remember, so we just felt that that was it, you know. And I really appreciate the specialists who put in the work on the 6 projects that come into us every grade-wise every year. Because for that 1,000 rupees, 1,050 rupees or whatever, it is much, much more than all the time that goes in, all the man hours that must be going in, all the research. And in 2005, we were the first ones to join. In 2005, we had the project 2006, we had the project 2007, and we have seen the progress and we have seen the how the children are stimulated. In fact, we all get excited, especially me. I just go around from class to class, and I'm on top of the teachers, and I'm telling you, it is so exciting. So the presentation was fabulous, Naveed, because we didn't know you guys were doing more than this. So I was just discussing this with Jameel, and I'm sure the other boards must be doing this kind of research. But the good thing about our Khan board is that they share it with everybody. And really, ladies and gentlemen, I really need everybody to give a big hand of love. But I didn't know that what we were doing to go further and help our schools identify all those children who are going to fall through the cracks, right? And it does happen. So we're going to, seriously, we're going to ask you to help us identify, schools can identify, but really identify those who are going to make it. There's some children who will make it in grade 9, but then there's some who are not going to make it. The high-risk students. I think that was the best part of the presentation, that our board has not just worked on project-based education just for the sake of it. Now, just a few suggestions, if I may. Yesterday we were at another meeting, and we were looking at assessments, and we were looking at 4 levels of assessment, and the 2 that were close to my heart were the psychomotor skills, assessing those, and assessing of attitudes. And I would really appreciate if all those wonderful people who are working on these projects would be working on something which is more of an attitude, more of a skill, something to do with sports, something to take the children out of the classrooms into the real world. So thank you very much.
After Naveed and Government, very little is left to talk about. They've taught you everything, but I don't know how many of you are, some of them are new over here, but did you see the children talking to you in the film? What it captured? It captured that I'm not telling you what my teacher told me, I'm telling you what I've learned myself. So they have become teachers. That's the depth of this project. It's simply amazing. And I've always told Shahzad, it's a route for multi-dimensional learning. And what I have seen is that teaching the privileged has never been an issue. Okay? Teaching the underprivileged, okay, and reaching out to them where the dropout rate is the highest is the issue. And I'm happy that AKUB has not started and gone and put their courses to the grammar school, to the affluent schools. It has reached us to mostly the trust schools, the lower end schools, and they are helping turn around our children from normal to excellence, taking out in reality what they are. So it's really been a wonderful experience, because whenever you make syllabus and curriculums, you're catering to a certain class of people. You have never gone to government schools and seen how those children learn. They don't have the privilege of computers or traveling or anything. So, and now the Cambridge system, I'm happy that in my school, when I took over the board in 1990, the first thing I removed from my school was the Cambridge system. I thought that was not the need of ours. But then I removed it, fine, then I got worried, because the metric system was not doing much. The more you cheated, the better the grades. And my children were getting excellent grades, and I was never satisfied. Are they actually that good? You're topping, they're getting highest grades, the percentages were amazing. Okay? And then we pestered the Aga Khan University. And more, Shams Laka and His Highness the Aga Khan. We are doing so many good works. Please, for heaven's sake, give us an examination board we can trust. And that's when it took them 6-7 years, and I'm happy that BBS, Mama Farsi, Al Murtaza, Habib's, these 6-7 trust schools were able to convince the Aga Khan examiners to get this examination board going. And today, it's proud that while the government had thought of, started thinking that we are going to bring Cambridge school teaching in the interior, and I told Johnson, I said they're heading for disaster. Okay? They don't know what they are talking about. And thank God, Shahzad took them around one or two schools of ours, one in Korangi, who's doing the Korangi Academy, and opened their eyes. And I think this is the best system to be adopted for the government schools, where it will turn around the children from a lot of things. And I don't know, they haven't talked about it, but let me tell you what happened in my school. It didn't end at 6, 7, 8. The children were fascinated. The teachers were impressed. They were so interested. They started doing it for class 4 and 5. It's gone down that deep in Shahzad was there, he was shocked himself. They developed the same thing for the class 4th and 5th. And some of the things that we witnessed together, even I didn't know, believe me. A class 4 kid telling me about migration, animal migrations, birds migration, human migration. What happened at the time of partition? We all talk about it. They had ownership. They were displaying it in plays. How people lost their lives. How people supported each other. How the Muslims saved the Hindus and the Hindus saved the Muslims. How the missionaries got together. So it was an amazing feeling that if a class 4 kid can really tell us that it's fun to go back to school, I think that's what project-based teaching has done, brought back into the system. And really it needs, whatever credit we can give them is very less to what actually they're trying to turn around. And I think that will be a big achievement for us.
Yes, let me start by appreciating Dr. Nadeem for a good presentation. You could have a good idea, but if you don't know how to put it across, it will be as good as not being there at all. So by being able to give us a good presentation, I think it's done very well, and it deserves another congratulations for the good work done. And I'm quite excited about this project because I attended a number of international conferences where presentations have been made on 20th century skills, particularly how to measure them. We assessment practitioners will want to categorize things and assign values to them. And you could see that the methods vary from one presentation to another. And I could say that up to now, one cannot say that the way has been found yet. But I am glad that at least this project is actually pushing that agenda to a point where one day we could say that we have found a way of actually testing and then creating the attitudes to the 21st century, which we all want to assess and then use for various purposes. And I listened to the presentation very well, and I saw that it was student-centered, and also it didn't leave the teachers out because it had training for the teachers as well. So for me, it was quite holistic. And then when I considered the reliability coefficients, they were quite high. And that also, to me, was quite impressive. And I saw that it went beyond just calculating the reliability coefficients to applying them to other scenarios, such as trying to predict who would be a high-risk student, and then, a low-risk one, as I would call it. And I think that the outcome of the research showed that something good could, be derived from the work that has been done. All the same, I was expecting that, when he said there was going to be some measurements, I was expecting to see values that would be given to the various skills that were identified. And that will then help us to build upon and get, the agenda towards really putting values or grades to these attitudes that he has identified. But I want to say that at the end of the day, it is a very good project towards that agenda which we all are struggling towards. So congratulations and thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I have no idea of school education. I'm coming in from a postgraduate education background. And of course, the 21st century skills are pretty much completely missing in 90% of our postgraduates. We're struggling with how to define competencies, how do we assess their critical thinking. And every time we look at our postgraduate students who are coming in from the public system, and you could actually clearly differentiate between the students who are coming from the primary system versus the school system. And those skills are completely missing. So I'm just wondering, if this change comes in Pakistan, Naveed, I think you should be the next president of Pakistan, the prime minister. Two positions right there, because what you guys have done, I don't have words to appreciate. I'm just so impressed. I used to think of Naveed as the younger brother, known him for such a long time. I knew he's very bright, but I didn't know he's that smart. And you don't have to look at us while you talk about reliability and how it can be artificially increased and what other things you could have used in validity and validating the scores. You make sure that you address most of the things, and there's so much more to do. And if this change can come in, and yes, I am definitely not a supporter of the Cambridge system. I think we need to strengthen our own system, the SSC, HSC system, which is a good system. The problem is not with the program. The problem is not with the content. The problem is what actually Mr. Jameel Yusuf, you identified with. It's the corruption which has actually destroyed the roots of our system, and that's where we need to work on. And hats off to you guys. You've done amazing work. I'm really impressed. And maybe we should give our examination system, at least at GSMU that we're struggling with, AKU board. You guys need to move in from school education to this level, because I think this is what needs. And this change can be brought into the entire country, this will become like the most developed country, because that's where our future is. That's the next Pakistan. So well done and congratulations again. Wow.
May I just add on to what she's saying? I think institutions like hers and people like her who are brave enough, they should actually be the ones who convince their boss. Like we all have to convince our managing committees, right? So you guys actually need to do it. Because if you do it, it was a demand of certain schools to have a school board, and then it was a demand of those certain schools to go to the college level also, right? So you've got to the college level, and so I'm sure it would go to the university level. They just need opportunity.
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. Parak, Dr. Lubna, Sam, and Mr. Jameel. Now I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions. And the way we're going to do this is, if you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll have a mic on you and you can address the question from the mic. We have one mic down there. Yes, Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Dias from EKU. Like Lubna, I'm a nurse by background. And congratulations, Naveed, the presentation was excellent. You'll need that. But I think what is important is that, it just doesn't permeate into schools, because I think what we are facing also is similar to what Dr. Lubna says with nursing schools. And I think, we talk about examinations, we're taking out quantities, numbers of it, but what exactly is our quality that is there? And what I saw in this presentation, I think, is that this is something that can be extended to professional education. So, and then monitor and see what is the difference. So I was talking to my boss behind there, Yasmin Amarsi, who's the guru of nursing, and I said this is something that needs to be addressed at the Pakistan Nursing Council level and bring in all the exams in to Punjab to all the four ports. So I think that's something, Amarsi, I put on your plate. Thank you.
Okay. So can we keep the questions to questions? Okay, as we are running short on time.
Thank you, Naveed. Martin. Naveed, what I really want to know from you and Lubna is, I saw a very interesting slide where I saw there were gradings on team building, innovation, and creativity. One thing I really want to know is this is a part of the grading system of class 5, 6, and 7, which means that they later on be graded on how much they score to team building, and innovation, and creativity. If they are, so I think I'm very clear enough that when you go to class 9 metric, you can't judge them on team building, creativity, innovation, class 9 metric. So what I want to know that what then are you doing with that data and that information? Are you suggesting to sport teachers that the students have scoring continuously high grades in team building, and maybe they should adopt careers in sports or same for creativity innovation? And I want to ask Lubna that if Naveed will provide you that data, will you able to give admissions to students on scoring high grades in team building, innovation, and creativity?
That's a very good question, and like she said, I'm really brave. I am in a public sector university. Just recently, the entire autonomy of the university has, in admission, has also been shifted to the Chief Minister of Sindh. So they're going to decide who's going to get admission, what's going to be the quota for which province. I can't, but let me answer that. But for my postgraduate program, we still have that power. And while giving admission in the postgraduate programs, I would definitely look at the students, if it can be added to their portfolio, we can look at that. The students do bring that, and definitely, personally, we try to do those little things, but admissions, we have no control in the public sector.
Hello, yes, coming back to the first question. So what do we do when the students come to grade 9 and 10? And that was what the original plan was, to actually include all these features into SSC and HSSC. That is still in the plan. Very soon we are going to showcase what the plans are. And this would need actually policy level change at the IBCC level, which is Inter-Board Chairman Committee, right? Which decides what all other boards can do, including AKUEB. The middle school program was a free playground for us because we were not being regulated. So we will do certain pilot studies based on our partner schools who are very eager to move forward. We will do certain pilot studies as a parallel system. We will do certain studies, and then we plan to take probably in the next 2 years, it will take this much time, to IBCC as to how the present SSC and HSSC system can be modified. One step at a time, of course. You also said that students who are good team workers could go into sports. I think we should all appreciate and recognize that teamworking and all these skills are required in all professions. And that is the need of today. I think this explains it.
Okay, thank you. We had one question in the front.
My name is Dr. Moin. I'm head of the Department of Medical Education at Jinnah Medical University. That's my boss sitting there. That's a brave lady. And she definitely is. My question, I have two small questions. When I was looking at your data, you showed that there's so many schools which are taking part. And there's so many teachers who must be involved. How do you ensure standardized faculty development? number one. And number two, what do you do with those students who are unable to cope with this system and they show lack of knowledge for that particular level? How do you deal with these students?
Right. Your first question, I think the credit goes to a very small teacher development team who travels across the country. So we are here in Karachi big time, we are in Tivas, and we are in Punjab, and we are big time in northern areas, Gilgit-Baltistan, and somewhat in Chitral KPK. We do have small satellite office in northern areas as well. The approach to as to how teaching is different from facilitation. This was the biggest challenge in the first year because we observed teachers teaching the projects, and it also happened by the end of the year when we received sample of projects. They were all the same for students, including the red color and the blue ribbon. And when we inquired teachers, they were very honest because we dictated them. So this was the start. So we had to develop their understanding as to what is the difference between teaching and facilitation, as to how students will take the ownership. The second part of the training is the assessment. They do bring in teachers from a few schools, I would say 2 or 3 schools, a small group of around 30 to 40 or 24, 20 teachers. A cluster of schools, we say, whom we train together. And we have actually developed a video in which there are 3 students who have predefined different levels at different competencies to solve a project. This is a short video of 5 to 7 minutes. We show them this video. They are asked to mark. We immediately show them the graphs as to how varied you are. We discuss each one of them, and we do this exercise again and prove that now you are relatively more standardized. However, I would say, since this was formative, this was low stakes, we did not put in much effort. So the credit would go to teacher development and to teachers who have done such a marvelous job. We weren't expected this much from these folks.
Yes, please.
Assalamualaikum, this is Umar Jabeen. Quite a lot of time it has come under the discussion that ethics and attitudes are important to inculcate in the modern generation or in the upcoming generation. And it also came under discussion that the government is not, opting for these kind of things. So why not the schools which are affiliated with the Outcome Examination Board can come forward and handhold with the government sector who are not having this much of resource which the fancy private schools are having with them, and why not Outcome Examination Board can develop something as the project-based learning to move forward and start bringing in the government school kids for the future.
Dr. Shizad Jiwan, Director of the Exam Board. Yes, a very pertinent question, very important. The person who asked the question is from Zinn Education Foundation, is one of the founding team members of the University Examination Board. We've been working very closely with the government at different forums, like at IPCC, and very active participation along with Sindh Curriculum Council, working with Education Secretary Sindh. Recently, we've been working with Government of Balochistan. So, almost a month back, a team from the Sindh Education Foundation went to Gorangi Academy School to see the middle school program, and the comprehensive presentation and display by the students, discussion with the parents and the government. So these steps are being taken with a very conscious steps that we are open to work with the government if opportunity arises.
Thank you. We have a question from the front here. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, Assalamualaikum. My name is Mariya. I've been in Pakistan for 5 years now. I'm teaching at Karachi Grammar School, which is a private school, and it also follows the Cambridge system very closely. I was very impressed with the presentation shown by Dr. Nabi. It gave me goosebumps, quite frankly, to see what students are able to do and what educators are actually doing to develop education, something that I think American students should also be doing in some schools back home. Because we are a private school following the Cambridge system, I was very intrigued by the comments from two of the speakers about Cambridge. And it's made me curious because I know that Cambridge is not a perfect system. We are following it right now. And I wonder if the comments said about Cambridge, like it is heading in the wrong direction, if that was based off on a previous time or if that's a recent observation, because Cambridge recently has come out with a new title. It's CAIE. It's no longer just about examinations, it's about assessment as well. And it also has introduced a course called Global Perspectives, which is a little similar in some ways to the excellent project that we saw today. And being somebody who is willing to try to change things at my school, I'd like to know what are your observations and even complaints about Cambridge and why you feel that way, because it's something that I think needs to be said.
Thank you very much. It's a very good question. We're not, at least I can say for myself, I was not critiquing the Cambridge system. What I was saying was the Cambridge system is an expensive system. For our government to go into our rural areas where people do not have enough to read and students do not have equal opportunities anyways, you are pushing and forcing people. Like the time when I was studying, it was just grammar school in Karachi. And I'm from Lahore, one school in Lahore that had Cambridge system. I came out from an SSC, HSC system, and I think I did okay, not doing badly. And there were other people that came out of the same system. But what has happened in the country is it is creating this biases. It's creating discrimination between two distinct populations. So people say these students that are coming out from, excuse me for saying this, Urdu medium schools. These students are coming in from Cambridge, so these are better students. So that is what the Cambridge system is doing. Cambridge system is excellent. And so is the other one, the GCSE system. There's nothing wrong with that. They're doing a great job. It's just that we need to build our own systems, which were there, which were functioning well. We need to promote that. The idea is not to disbandon or throw away the system that was functioning well and has been destroyed due to nepotism and corruption, and to go into another system or adopt another system directly from another country. That was my premise of saying that I think we need to build our own systems better, which are cheaper, which are more contextual for our region.
I must congratulate you, really appreciate it, really frank question. You want to learn what's wrong with this. What's wrong is this. One grammar school, Karachi Grammar School, chooses the best, the cream of Karachi, the richest of the rich. Each child of yours, I don't know if you've done a study, I can do it for you, with evidence, who wants to do A level or O level, needs to take tuitions in all the subjects. The expense for the tuitions is something around 70 to 80,000 rupees a month. The child needs a car, needs a driver. Now can you tell me how many people in Pakistan can afford this? Because the Great Cambridge system has never tried to reach out to the schools. The difference with AQUB is that they come to us. We don't have to call them twice. They are telling us where our children are lacking. They are telling us how the children are faring all across the country. If you see the statistics that they develop, you go crazy. Is it possible that they're doing this? And the way they take the pains to help us do it. Teachers are not available. When Karachi Grammar School, you're right, Convent of Jesus and Mary, St. Joseph's had a section, St. Pat's has a section. They were doing excellent. And we were doing excellent in country. We didn't need the Cambridge system. But now, after the nationalization of education, the disaster started. Either you had Urdu medium or you had to follow a foreign board. This was the gift Bhutto gave us. And to get away from the Urdu medium, we had to choose Cambridge. That's where this feeling came up. being of Urdu group and that. Go and talk with the NED Vice Chancellor. He started with a quota for AKUB. Now the children passing the 10th grade of AKUB are beating the Cambridge students in admissions. And believe me, come to my school, you will find my Chokidar's child, and you'll find the Vice Chancellor's child studying in the same school. That's the difference that you don't know. And the confidence you saw of these kids in the movies, believe they are middle class, lower middle class. But in Cambridge, go to Bayview, go to Foundation, go to City School, Beacon House, Cambridge. In the toilet is the library, in the kitchen is the lab, and the Cambridge system. So where is Cambridge system checking this? They're charging the fees without any monitoring. So these things are there, and interior system. You can't get teachers who can teach Cambridge systems. And I think grammar schools should bring a law that their teachers cannot give tuitions that we have brought in our school. No teacher is allowed to give private tuitions to anybody.
Excuse me, for the sake of time, I'm going to have to ask you to continue this. We have time for one last question.
Let's just wrap this up by saying
we really are over time. I'm sorry, but we are.
No, I also think it's mostly about the expenses and the Urdu medium and the English medium.
Okay, one last question, and
My
let's keep it brief.
Directed towards the principals of the schools who already have the project in place. As a prospective school who might be considering this project, we're wondering how does the school manage to complete the benchmarks of the curriculums for grades 6, 7, and 8 with these projects going on simultaneously? Because naturally, if these projects automatically the kind of work that would be required to complete or go forward with these projects, they cannot be taught in the same way as you do conventional teaching. So when you bring about a change, what happens to the curriculum progression going into grade 9 and 10? And how much of it do you have to cut back on? Or are you able to meet all your benchmarks for the curriculum for all these years?
VBS meets all its benchmarks because we are very well planned in advance. I think it's all about planning, it's all about time management, and it's using your Saturdays also sometimes. So we tend to do that. Not Sundays, let's not. But but we tend to use our Saturdays when we have culminating the projects. We call them the project day. So we try to use Saturdays. We plan well in advance. We do not give a midterm in October, and we do not give a midterm in March. We do not do those. So we follow a proper timetable. So we plan. And believe you me, if you have planned well and you've timed it well, and your teacher knows exactly what he or she is doing, there will not be an issue. You just need to be brave enough to do it.
And this is not out of the course. One project is teaching them 100 things, which will be teaching over a month. So it's actually replacing, and they enjoy it. The teachers, the students are all in the same grade and the same level. When I said about 4th, 5th, I forgot to tell you. My class 6 students were teaching the 4th class students of how to do it. So I had so many teachers available within the school system that the teachers didn't have to divert too much time. And that was the beauty of this program. How the children of the higher grades enjoyed teaching the younger grades how to do it. So it was a mixture of the students and teachers, and I've never seen so much of enjoyment in a school, and we didn't like too much to come to school, all right? We waited for a holiday, right? So that's changed.
Okay, thank you. With that, we draw the question and answer to a close. If you have any questions, and I know you all do, then perhaps you can ask our experts over tea, which will be followed afterwards. For